Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is our profile guest, Senator Jim Sasser of Tennessee. And we're fortunate to have with us Senator Sasser, just the ability to be able to talk to you this morning about some of the important issues in Tennessee politics and some of the important issues in Tennessee health problems.
Well, I'm pleased to be here, Dr. Haney, and very much appreciate the invitation to join you here on your program this morning.
Senator Sasser, what I'd like to do this morning is to give you an opportunity to give us some information about your career. Certainly all of us know you as a senator who has been concerned about a large number of issues, and that we'd like to talk about the issue of health this morning. But we would also like for you to sort of give us some biographical information, information that will make more of our audience acquainted with some of the aspects and some of the probably crossroad activities that you've been involved in.
Well, I'm pleased to do that, Dr. Haney. I'm a native Tennessean, as I'm sure you know. Born in Memphis, educated here in Nashville, in the public schools of Nashville, and then for a year at the University of Tennessee, graduated from Vanderbilt University, and then went to Vanderbilt Law School here. Served briefly in the U.S. Marine Corps, and married here in Nashville to my college sweetheart, and we have two children, both one grown and out of college now, and the other one a junior in college. And I've been active politically really since, I suppose back in the late 60s, early 70s, and have had many contacts here with the Nashville community. One that you and I both know of, my father, Ralph Sasser, was a colleague of yours at Tennessee State University many years ago, working out there with the Development Foundation.
Very good. Senator Sasser, I think one of the issues that we'd like to address this morning has to do with health care. And there are so many things that we could possibly talk about. I think today the Tennessee legislature is still dealing with an issue of Medicaid, and we're still trying to fund that as a system. But you've been involved with health care and health care legislation for the longest. And what we'd like to do now is to get you to talk about your perceptions of some of the legislation that you were successful in getting through Congress, and some of the problems that you found in looking at our healthcare system, the problem of cost, the problem of access, and that kind of thing, the general information that you'd like to give us about healthcare.
Well, I'm sure, as you know, Dr. Haney, from your own experience and the experience of your friends, healthcare is one of the most talked about issues in our country now, and certainly here in Tennessee and in Nashville. The cost of healthcare, how we deliver cost-effective, quality health care to all of our citizens. I think that's going to be the overriding dialogue or question of the decade here of the early 1990s. I expect we'll hear a lot of discussion about that in the upcoming presidential election and beyond, as a matter of fact. Now, what I have been focusing on in my role as chairman of the Senate Budget Committee is trying to take an overall look at the health care problem in the country, and particularly the problems in Medicare that the federal government, as you know, pays for.
Well, what are some of the problems? Senator Sasser, I think that, first of all, let's have you to give our audience a definition of the distinction between Medicaid and Medicare, because I think that you've been involved in Medicare quite extensively, and let's talk about that later on. But first of all, give us that distinction.
I think you make a good point in making the distinction, because many people are not sure what the distinction is. Medicare, as I'm sure you know, is a program to provide hospital care and physician care or doctor's care for our older citizens, those aged 62 and above, or perhaps 60 and above. And they access the Medicare system by virtue of their contributions during their period of work into the Medicare system, and then after they are eligible for Medicaid by paying a certain minimum Medicare premium every year. Medicaid, on the other hand, is a program for to provide medical care to the poorer members of our population, those who, because of economic circumstances, simply can't access the health care system. And that can be provided to someone of any age as long as they meet certain qualifications, and that is they have to be unable or do not have the economic resources or assets to pay for health care. Medicaid is paid for partly by the federal government and partly by the state government. Medicare is paid for mostly by the federal government, but partly also by premiums that the recipients pay in during their lifetime.
Very good. And I think, Senator Sasser, one of the problems that we've all been faced with, I think it has to do with disabilities. I think
yes.
the Americans with Disabilities Act that was passed quite recently will do quite a number of things in terms of helping those who are disabled. But you are also involved, and you were involved, I think, in terms of investigation and in terms of legislation as well, with what was known as the durable equipment part of the Disabilities Act. Now, why don't you give us some information about that durable equipment?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, Dr. Haney. We were studying, as I said, we're studying various aspects of the healthcare system, all in an effort to make it more cost-effective and cost-efficient. And we found that there was one area of the Medicare system that was in glaring need of some sort of investigation or remedy, and this dealt with something called durable medical equipment. Your viewers may know that that consists of wheelchairs, ostomy kits, neck braces, arm braces, 2,000 or 3,000 different items that are used in the medical field. And we found that there was quite a bit of abuse in this durable medical equipment field, and found that Medicare itself, in some instances, was just simply being ripped off by some unethical durable medical equipment operators. And we propose legislation to deal with that problem.
Why don't you give us some examples, Senator? I think that many examples have appeared in the newspaper in terms of some of the problems in that system. Yeah. Why don't you talk about some of those problems?
Well, you and your viewers are probably familiar with some of them from the very extensive, and I might say excellent, coverage that was given this whole problem by the Nashville Tennessean here in Nashville. Mr. Jerry Thompson and Mr. Bob Sherborne, two very good reporters, really were the ones that started to be down the road to investigating this durable medical equipment business. But what you would have is these unethical operators would follow a process called unbundling. And how this would work is they might sell the Medicare system a piece of equipment, or sell the Medicare consumer a piece of equipment. And then they would bill the Medicare system for it in a number of pieces. In other words, they'd break the equipment down. If it was a wheelchair, you might bill them for a wheel bearing, a pad, etc. And when you bill them separately, then the whole thing costs a lot more. I've said it would be similar to you going to your Ford dealer or Chevrolet dealer and buying a new car part by part, and you'd find that the Ford or Chevrolet you might pay $15,000 for. If you bought it part by part, it would cost you over $100,000. So we had that problem of unbundling, and I think